The man who is going to be chairing that committee hearing, Foreign Relations Chair Bob Menendez. You're going to preside over that hearing. You've just come from the intelligence briefing. Tell me, what can you tell your members, and what questions do you have for the leaders, the national security leaders, as to whether this will be effective enough to satisfy the John McCains and will have a light enough imprint and a short enough timetable to satisfy senators like Pat Leahy?
Well, Andrea, I believe that, first of all, on the case itself about the use of chemical weapons, I think that the briefings that members have gotten, the one that I just left, among others, has made it very strong for members that this is not an Iraq type of situation, that it is clear that the Assad regime used chemical weapons against innocent civilians, in the last instance killing about 1,400 citizens, including over 400 children. I think that much is now solidly being created in the minds of members. The question then is, how does one respond to that? And in that respect, I think that what the administration is putting forward, what I look forward to hearing at today's hearing, is a military action that is limited in scope, but decisive in the use of force against targets of the regime, that both deter, degrade his ability to level chemical weapons again against his civilian population, and in doing so, at the same time, degrades his overall capability. And I think that that balance and the relatively short-term nature of the engagement we are talking about, without American boots on the ground, without troops on the ground, is something that I believe members, when they hear all of the testimony, will find their way to support.
Pat Leahy, among others, and certainly many members of the House, Democrats as well as Republicans, are calling for a time limit. Is there going to be a time limit in this resolution as it comes out of your committee?
Well, I think that our goal is to ensure that this is not an open-ended process, to ensure that there is specific language about no boots on the ground of American troops, but at the same time to strike a balance that permits the president to conduct the very type of military action that stops the use of chemical weapons, that sends a global message as well that the use of chemical weapons is not permitted under international law, and there is a serious consequence for it, that sends a message to the Ayatollah in Iran: do not march towards those nuclear weapons, because we mean what we say, that sends the leader of North Korea a clear message: do not even think about using your chemical weapons on the Korean Peninsula. That's all part of what is going on here, and I think the resolution can be drafted in a way that assuages the concerns of people like Senator Leahy, but it permits the president to conduct the type of action in a way that will be successful, that will be limited, but will be powerful enough in both castigating the Assad regime and sending a global message.
What do you say to the John McCains and Lindsey Grahams who say that the president promised in June that the opposition would get weapons, and they still have not received those weapons?
Well, I think part of it, the president would say that they have been training elements of the vetted moderate opposition in Syria to have the capacity to use the weapons that Senator McCain and Senator Graham and others are advocating for. As a matter of fact, the Committee on Foreign Relations that I chair several months ago voted 15-3 to be able to do exactly that, to both train and arm the vetted elements of the Syrian opposition that we believe would share largely the values we want to see in Syria, and I think we are moving in that direction. But in this particular case, the real question is, are we going to send a message to the world that the use of chemical weapons in violation of international law will not be permitted, and send messages to other actors in the world that there are real consequences for it, at the same time that we continue to assist in a parallel track of those vetted elements of the Syrian opposition? And it is my hope that that's what we'll achieve.
Your predecessor as chair, John Kerry, went out with a ringing message, first on Monday last week, followed by Joe Biden on Wednesday to the American Legion, then Kerry passionately on Friday, coming right out of the National Security Council. And it wasn't until that night that the president clearly had a change of mind about getting a congressional authorization. Does that undermine the message, all the uncertainty with which the White House came to this decision?
Well, I believe that the bringing together of Congress in support of a resolution for limited military actions in this particular regard will be a stronger message globally. Some may see it as weakness at this point. At the end of the day, it sends a message to our allies across the globe that we mean what we say and will do it, and will have the support of the full government of the United States, as well as sends that similar message to our enemies. And I think the President and the country will be strengthened by that support, and the ultimate mission will be more successful as a result of it.
Now, the Pentagon has acknowledged that the U.S. was involved in planning and in executing this Israeli anti-missile defense over the Mediterranean today, this missile test. Was that to send a signal to Syria? What suspicious timing, one would think.
Well, I think that the signal that may very well be sent is that do not even contemplate acting against other countries in the region, or against American interests for that fact, if and when the strike takes place. The ability for Israel to defend itself, the ability of other countries in the region, Turkey and Jordan, the massive amount of firepower that exists in the region, I think sends a pretty clear message to Syria, to Iran, to Hezbollah, of the consequences of any retaliation by them. And at the end of the day, I would suggest that it is preemptive and protective in terms of the message that is sent, so that we don't see any follow-on consequences.
Senator Menendez, thank you so much. I know it's a busy day. Thanks for taking time to preview your hearing, the important hearing this afternoon.